All right, you guys, impromptu live in process. I was just meeting with Bona about a challenge that she's going to be running for Capsho soon. And they're looking at using the Find Your Voice challenge as a way to kind of jumpstart the attendance and the engagement in that challenge. And so I was like, hey, what do you think about going live with me right now?
And I said, now.
And it was cool too. Do you mind if I say the other thing you said too?
Ooh, I can't remember what I said, so please go ahead. Yes.
Oh my gosh, because it was so good. Because you're like, I don't know who would want to watch that.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says. That's what everybody says. And so they think they have to be like, and this is totally good. It have everything. And this is the opposite. So it's like they think they have to have something prepared or something figured out. And so that's kind of exhausting sometimes, right? When you have to always be that way. And so I like helping people just jump and just doing the thing. And it's kind of not for the other people. It's for you as a way to just get energy around the stuff you're doing. And whether no one watches or whatever. And we're kind of leading into Find Your Voice right now, because that's what Find Your Voice really helps people do. It helps them just move, get into momentum. And that's where the most amazing things happen. So anyway, so thanks for saying that, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's Find Your Voice. That's exactly why we've got to do this.
Yeah.
So please share with everyone, because I've loved working with you guys. I mean, my heart, I think I mentioned it at the mastermind too. I've never felt like so, I don't know, seen is the word I want to look for, because I feel like you really see what I'm doing and you're just accepting all the things. And so anyway, I'm just really grateful for our partnership. And I'd love you to just share, who you are and what you do. And then we'll go on to our discussion.
A little meeting, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, Stacey. So hi everyone who's watching replay live, wherever you are. My name is Bona Rai. I am one of 3 co-founders here at Capsho. And those of you who don't know what Capsho is, we are an AI-powered tool that basically at the moment, because we're constantly developing the tool, takes audio, video recording, no matter how polished or unpolished it is, and it turns it into basically all of the content marketing assets you would need to further amplify your voice and get your message out there. So everything from video clips to blog posts to LinkedIn articles, social media captions, basically everything you need to publish, promote, and continue to market. So that's what we are, what we do. And like Stacey said, we are here to basically empower entrepreneurs and people who have a message to share to reach more of their audience. So as part of that, in January, along with another phenomenal software product, which some of you guys may know, called ECAMM, we are going to be running a challenge that's basically going to run over a couple of weeks and really help you build a content habit and really kind of get regular with creating content with intention and getting it out there. So as part of that, we thought a precursor to that would be great to help people find or maybe refine their voice so that they can really make the most of that challenge. Or after the challenge, if they feel like, gosh, that was a little bit difficult and I don't know why, then we thought that helping them find their voice kind of post that experience would be a really great thing to do as well. So that's what I do. And that's why I'm here to kind of pick Stacey's brain about how this could work for an audience like ours.
Yay. I'm so glad you said that, because all of a sudden all these ideas are spurting in my mind. Because I'm sharing with this group about it's a collaboration network and the power of these collaborations and kind of knowing where your thing fits in with other people's thing. And eventually I see this challenge being something that I'm going to put in organizations all over the world. And it's going to be kind of like what you're doing. It's a jumpstart to get people to rally around a goal, but also get to know each other in the coolest way.
Yeah.
And then which kind of makes them feel safe to even do the challenge that you're going to have with ECAMM, because there might be some people that want to resist. I've noticed a lot of people run challenges and there's a percentage of people that get engaged, but there's also this huge percentage that are still kind of in the weeds, right? And trying to figure out what to do. And when they do find your voice, that's what kind of gives the safe space for the challenge. So they are like, okay, I can be messy and figure this out, or I can ask questions like, I don't know what to do. I'm confused with tech, or I'm paralyzed with the camera. So just even from that perception alone, without even it being a direct connection with what we're talking about with the authentic voice and amplifying your voice, just from anyone doing a challenge, I'm even going to do this with companies where they use this as a way to help employees feel safe to say what's on their mind and what their goals are and what they're struggling with. And so does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely going to be a portion so I think this is the second time we're going to be running the ECAMM challenge, or the challenge with ECAMM, alongside ECAMM. So I think definitely helping people who they sign up to the ECAMM challenge kind of knowing that they probably need to get into that habit, but maybe are unsure of what their voice or their message could be. It's definitely, I think, a really great group of people to work with. How would you think about, Stacey, sort of people who maybe have been doing this for a little while, maybe not even a long time, but they kind of feel pretty sure of maybe the message they want to put out there? Is it just about getting more reps in? How would we position finding your voice challenge and that process with them?
Yeah, there's going to be a few ways, but I'll speak to your specific question on in terms of the person that's already good at doing this, right? Yeah. With that person, where I notice Find Your Voice really helps is that person's still taking a long time, usually to record their videos or to do whatever content they're wanting to create. There's still some kind of structure and process. Yeah. When they do Find Your Voice, it helps them get out of their head so fast because they're jumping into quick, fast action that they no longer are thinking, preparing, and it goes fast. Granted, there can be times where they're still preparing, but as a general rule, it's going to save hours of time from them having to record or do any kind of content. So for that, I think it would be good because what it does is it gives you confidence to show up as yourself. So even though they might already be doing the content and it might already be going well because they're tapped into their message, I found typically there's a huge percentage of people that are still thinking they have to be this show in order to show up, right? And so Find Your Voice releases all of that. So it gets you to accelerate. That's why the first episode for our show was Unleashing Your Content Beast, because it's accelerating that content creation process with you being able to do it in that way.
I love that. So then it could almost even be, I think I like the word accelerate. I even like the idea of short-circuiting your own processes around this, because some of these people I know, for example, they might be really, to your point, really confident with doing a pre-recorded show that they've been doing for a little while, but they might have aspirations to speak on stage or something, take it to the next level where they need to be a little bit less rehearsed, which sounds strange because you think stage, you think rehearsals, but they want to have a more maybe dynamic and relaxed presence about them versus just someone who is really good at doing prepared content.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. And you just made me think of this. So there's a couple things here. I just done my TEDx talk and it was a long process, right? So it was a lot. And by the end of it, I was exhausted. And then Eileen Wilder, my mentor, she ended up inviting me to speak in front of her high-level mastermind in Las Vegas. And I had no time, and I didn't say yes yet. I had no time to prepare anything for it. And it was for her mastermind, $25,000 people in Las Vegas. And the TEDx thing ended Thursday, but then I have my people that were stayed and we did a mastermind and all stuff. So this was Friday, and then the mastermind was on Sunday. And I was initially going to say no because I was exhausted and I just couldn't even think how I would show up and give value for the people, right? And then I was talking to a good friend of mine and she was like, you can't say no. How would you say no? But the only reason I would say no is because I wouldn't think I'd be good enough for her audience. And so once I realized that was it, I was like, and Eileen Wilder, I don't know how much about her, but she basically is like the queen of stages. She does funnel hacking live, like all this stuff. And so I'm thinking I have to be a speaker for her audience in my mind. But what I realized was she's not having me come in front of her audience because I'm this amazing speaker. She's having me come because I'm myself. I've found my voice. And so then I tapped into that. And so I did that. I did speak. And it was the first time that I ever spoke to her audience, because I've done it a few times now. This was the first time that it ever connected in the way that it did, where I literally heard the ohs and the ahs, and then everyone came up after, and I had no idea what I was going to say until I knew I was going to talk about my experience with the TEDx and reflecting and finding my voice, but I didn't have a script. I had no bullet points. I didn't really have time to do anything. And so that's one example. Another example is kind of the same thing. It's really been a fire hose, really, since this whole TEDx thing, because it's just been one thing after another and unexpected, right? Because then the TEDx talk came out. I think, no, it hadn't come out yet. Anyway, whatever it was not much time when this next offer came in. I had another offer that came in on a Wednesday, and they offered me to do a keynote to a women's retreat center through the YMCA, and it was 100 people. I'm new at speaking. I have not been doing speaking, like online speaking I do. And I've done this with lots of people, but not in person. It's still really new, very amateur comedy. And then the TEDx talk now. But at the time I hadn't done that. No, I did do the TEDx talk. It just wasn't out yet. So yeah, so it was Wednesday. And then they were like Saturday. And who you would normally, people would say no, unless you already have a keynote prepared and you've been doing it years. Yeah. And anyway, they said I could talk about finding your voice and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, again, they just want me to be myself, right? So again, I had an idea for what I was going to do because I've done workshops on this before. And I went, and the same thing, I had all these people coming after saying, oh my gosh, that was so good. And if I would have said no, I would have missed this opportunity. And so anyway, there's more examples, but those are just a couple of just how you're able to trust yourself.
Yes.
Show up, whether it's your audience, whether it's someone else's audience, because or you want a TEDx talk or you want to speak, whatever, it's like you're now trusting yourself that you're going to know the words you're going to say.
What I love about that is there's obviously a lot of, especially with things like this, there's always a lot of talk about imposter syndrome. And whilst I wouldn't say that imposter syndrome is not real, I think as I grow older and get exposed to things like this, even if it's through the stories of others, to be honest, Stacey, that you sort of start to your point, I think that's the trick, if there is one, is you're shortening the time, space, whatever, your access to your true self. So imposter syndrome kind of doesn't become a thing anymore because, to your point, if you have a view that you have to be XYZ before you can do these things or even be invited to do these things, then that's a real thing because you are an imposter because you're not those things yet. But if you realize that you're being asked to do these things or you're putting yourselves in this position because they just need you to be you and you have a very good understanding of who you is, then there's no problem. I think sometimes you feel that imposter syndrome. Even when people say, just be yourself. You're like, well, I don't actually have a true sense of who I am. That's why you project this external thing versus who you are. That's why you're like, oh, I just bring myself versus for some people, they don't know who that is even. And so it's actually easier for me to bring the version that I've cultivated than the true me because I don't know the true me. And that's even scarier to admit.
That is so good. And that's what Find Your Voice does.
Yeah.
It helps them tap in who they are from the inside. Yeah.
Wow. So it's not like, again, you've just come up with an idea of your voice. You've actually gone through the motions. And that's where the confidence comes in because you have evidence of whether it's talking into a recording or going live to nobody or being on a stage in front of hundreds of people. You've actually done it from your true self versus an idea.
And oh my gosh, I'm so glad we did this. And it also kind of then doesn't matter who shows up anymore. Yeah. And once you've released that outcome of, oh, I need people to be there, you're doing it for yourself because you love it.
Yeah.
There's no more exhaustion of anything because you're tapped into your truest self.
Exactly. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, let's say, even if that was important to you, like people watching or being received well, let's say, because that kind of happens even if you're not being yourself, right? Even if you're just putting out content that you aren't necessarily, is not your truest self, and you're still struggling with the idea of people not watching and stuff. So if you're going to go through that, you might as well go through it with your own stuff. That you've been told that might be what you need to be doing. So
yeah,
super interesting, especially for people who are aspiring to be true leaders, whatever that looks like, whether it's of their company, of their family, even of themselves. I think that's a really interesting sort of thing to lean into, especially with where we're at now, where there's a lot of people with a lot to say. So it's almost like you have to get cut through with something that's actually going to resonate. And that's going to become increasingly harder.
You're also making me realize, well, number one, I keep thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be so good to put this recording through Capsho later and it can help us. So that's the first thing I was thinking of is, oh, I can't wait to see what this Capsho is going to turn this video into. That's why I just hit record just in case the live is working. So that's exciting. Yay, Capsho. Yeah. And then the second thing is, because I found my voice, I'm not afraid to even talk about things that may sound weird to some people. So we talked about right before we hit record, I was like, oh, I'm kind of exhausted right now because I've been trying to explain this offer that I have right now with the wealth experiment. And people don't understand this piece that we're talking about, this Find Your Voice piece, why it's so important for people to have it, to even engage their community. And so technically I could leave this out and I could just say, invite people to your challenge. And it doesn't have to be Find Your Voice. It could be any challenge. But in my mind, it's important that they know it's Find Your Voice. So that way they kind of have a heads up of why it works. But here's the point of that. Kind of none of that matters. But what does matter is I found my voice. So I'm actually okay having conversations, not knowing exactly what I'm saying or even people understanding yet. Because the more that I talk, and what you've just said in this, that's why I'm like, cannot wait till Capsho to pull it out, is I'm tapping even deeper into my message because I'm talking to you about it.
Yeah.
And so if you're stuck in your head and you're scared to go live, or you're scared to hit record, or you're scared to record XYZ content, it stays there. It's hard to evolve the idea and expand it. But when you found your voice, and it kind of doesn't matter if what you say doesn't make sense, the questions are what then kind of expands the idea. And you get to hear other people's perspectives of what you're doing, which then gets it even bigger. So I think that's another thing that could be helpful for the people, especially I'm sure a lot of them want collaboration partners, people that they want to work with. And when you're no longer scared of who you are and what you're doing and sharing that and talking to people, now it's like everything gets to just explode on the biggest level.
Yeah. And when you do attract those collaborations, that these people are intrinsically aligned because they're responding to the real you versus maybe something you've put out there that may not be exactly who you are or what you're in alignment with. And I think another thing, as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing is that I think it can be easy to think that this is also based on personality type or preference type. And what I mean by that is I think if you're sitting here and going, oh, okay, well, that seems like a very extroverted thing to do as someone who gets meaning out of externalizing versus people who are a bit more introverted or internalizing. So I think an interesting thing to if you're in that bucket, to think about, because I know I can definitely be in that bucket, but it's less about kind of like hopping on a stage and yelling into the void. It's probably more about, even with your comfort circle, Stacey, we talk about even if it's just typing it out or recording it to yourself, even to begin with. If you're not someone who is regularly, I think, putting a message out there outside of yourself, then you sort of lose, I think, some of that joining the dots ability that you can have. Even when we're talking like this in conversation very casually, you start to join some dots that may not exist if it's just in your head. Well, but you don't see those additional dots. So I think there's, even if you're someone who was like, hang on, I don't really know if this is for me because I don't want to be on a TEDx stage one day. That's not really what I have an aspiration around. But it's less about that and kind of going, well, how can you actually just externalize it in a way that makes sense just so that you can actually go deeper? Because as someone, for me, I'm very introspective, for example, and I know I hit a certain limit sometimes around, because I'm only confining it to myself and my perspective and my way of viewing the world. Putting it out there, even if it's in a simple conversation like this, helps give it new dimension and new dots appear that I can happily join even after the conversation. So I would invite people who maybe don't identify as being as, say, confident as you, Stacey, or as extroverted, that this is actually a really, maybe an even more valuable exercise for you to do to really commit to your message in this true depth and dimension.
Yeah, it's so true. What you said about the dots really also hits me, because that's how everything I've done has become so alive, because I'm not scared to talk about what I'm doing, where I think a lot of people can get in their head about what they're doing because they're scared it's going to get judged in the wrong way. But when you have these conversations like today, I mean, I cannot wait to listen back to this and really kind of process how I can help articulate this message even better. But that's what it does, is you get all these different perspectives by talking to people, which I think goes in line with the people that are going to be wanting to do your challenge too, right? Is they're going to want that. So, okay, so I'm excited to tell you this too, because I have ideas for the challenge also. So now we have the kind of why they should do it, right? Does that feel good for you? Okay. Any questions there about?
No, I think the only point I would add, just more as a record, I'm doing some of the copy.
Yeah, great.
I think in that last point that you made, like you said, sometimes I know when it comes to psychology around accountability and stuff, sometimes just talking about it feels like we've done it. But I think what I love about how you're going about this is, even when you were like, hey, Bona, I know you're not ready to go live, but can we just go live with this meeting? I'm like, with an internal meeting? What? You know, kind of like we're talking about it, but we're also doing it, if that makes sense. I think the doing part is really important, because you and I could sit on a private Zoom and talk about the importance of going live. And I could feel good about saying, oh, well, at least I talked to Stacey about going live. But you're like, no, we're actually going to also talk about it and do it while we're talking about it. So I think that is the most important part, because some parts of our brain sometimes can just get enough, I think, from just saying that we're doing something versus doing it. And then we don't actually follow through with it. So that's probably the piece where it's like, no, the reason you need to do this is also train your body in this process versus just thinking about doing it and planning to do it, but never actually doing it.
Yeah. And that's what I love about adding the live to it too, is because you're putting this energy around it. And this happened during my dating challenge. One of the dares it was a bonus dare. It was like start a podcast. And it came from the guy that owns my podcast platform. And no one took us up on it because they were like, start a podcast. It's crazy. Why would we just want to date? But in my mind, I'm like, podcast would be the best dating hack ever because you have a reason to talk to people. So then I was doing a second dating challenge and I had dropped the idea. But someone heard my podcast episode where I'm talking about it and they heard the dare. And he was like, are you still doing that? And so that's what brought my even podcast challenge back to life, was someone listening to something I had said 6 months before. And then I'm like, well, if you're interested, I could show you. And that's literally hundreds of people started podcasts because that guy said that. But yeah, so I love it from that reason too. But you kind of have to find your voice before you could just go live anytime you want also, right? Because it is scary. Yeah. And so cool. So that's great. And so now from a community standpoint and having it be the thing that really kind of precedes this challenge and why it's good is they have this goal now. You've tapped into the goal of what your audience wants, right? Which, let's just say it again in case it helps. What was most alive for you? What would be the goal for them to do the Find Your Voice challenge that will help your audience?
Well, I think it is really, whether you're new to kind of creating your content or you feel like you are quite seasoned at it, it's almost like doing this internal audit to make sure that the message that you're putting out there and about to use Capsho and pay Capsho to do all of this amplification is actually a true reflection of what you want to be talking about, what you want to be selling, because a lot of our people obviously are online selling the services and things like that, and to actually make sure that you're investing with intention into those things. So I think it's almost the quality of message is going to be really important for our people.
Yeah. And so that's the goal. You know how there's always the sexy thing people want, and then there's the other stuff they get. So what's going to happen is when they're in this experience, they're going to be doing it together as a group with that goal. And so there's this really beautiful, just deep connection that happens when people do this challenge together, because you're getting to, number one, I have them declare why they want to do it, what they're wanting to get out of it. And then number two, then this is the space creator. Creates the safe space, is what are your excuses for what's going to get in your way as you want to do this, and how are you going to overcome them? So here's what happens is we don't realize that everyone has the same excuses as us. We all have the same excuses.
We think we're special.
We do. We think we're special in our excuses. And so when people get to see that other people struggle with the same things, because think about it, no matter who you are, like you're Oprah, we all have the same things that come up always. It's just some people, Oprah is better at managing it and she's able to have a shorter window. Hers might only be 5 minutes of that excuse coming up and her saying, no, you're good. You got this, right? Whereas another person, it could be 6 months. So it's just the time to overcome the excuse, but we all have it.
That is so good. It's almost like you're building that muscle to shorten that time to overcome your excuse. But the excuse itself is not different. Yeah. Having more people, it's not like having more time. I mean, but yeah, I love that.
Yay. And so that challenge, that specific dare, that's a space creator, because now everyone in your community is getting to know each other in a really cool way. And the dares are very simple once we get through those two, which is part of my formula on how to get people into success, which is like identifying the why, which Simon Sinek talks about it. But the thing, which I'm eventually going to reach out to him because he also talks about community. And I don't know if he's connected it together yet. I'm not sure. I haven't heard enough of his stuff yet. But when you are able to identify why you want to do something and you do it with the group of people that share your same goal, wow. Because now you may say something that I didn't even think of, but I'm seeing you say it in a group and it's like, oh, I didn't think about that. There's that too. And it expands your idea. And then you're getting the excuses dare, which is M for mindset. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we all have the same excuses. Why can't I do this? Right. And then I just get into very kind of simple, they're just reflection dares. If you were going to write a book, what book would you write? What are you proud of? It's like little simple, kind of like you don't even realize that you're doing it because it's so simple, but you're doing it together. So now everyone that's joining your ECAMM challenge, by the time they do that challenge, they're all friends.
Yes. That's actually a really important part of it too, because I know with anything, for us to stick with anything, it has to be enjoyable to us in some way. And even if it's some of those things like, I don't know, working out might feel torturous, you enjoy the endorphins you get afterwards. So there has to be an enjoyment level, I think. And to that point, with the challenge, the actual ECAMM challenge, if the first few days is kind of like people just feeling a little bit, they haven't warmed up yet, it's probably going to take away from the challenge to actually get them to warm up and feel familiar and then start to engage in it. So I love that we'll actually be able to, at least for the people who are going to be participating in an engaged way, that, to your point, they're kind of going in sort of knowing each other already and ready to actually engage with now the creation part of things in a more systematic way, ECAMM and Capsho.
Yeah, I noticed this. So when I had my TEDx talk, it was in San Diego, and a lot of my community members flew down to see it, even from Canada. It was so cool. And I was like, man, I want to do something that would be fun while they're traveling. And I decided to have them do this dare. And the dare was ask somebody, if you were going to do a TEDx talk, what would your TEDx talk be? By the way, that's a really fun dare. I welcome you to do that one. And so it was amazing. One of the people, Janie, even got a pilot to do it where she got to sit in the cockpit and everything. It was crazy. Yeah, crazy things happened. And so they flew down. They had so much fun doing this dare. But then when we're all together in San Diego, everyone's still doing it. And because they're together, like we're doing it in the Uber ended up giving us his TED talk in the car. So much fun because we know each other. It's almost like a reunion. So ECAMM challenge now will almost be, I mean, I think is it going to continue, or is there going to be a break between Find Your Voice and ECAMM?
I think we'll have to figure out the logistics of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming it'll be, anyway, we'll have to,
Yeah. And so regardless of what it is, it'll almost be, they're already going to know each other. And so it's going to make the hard things better together. And so let's say there's a tech issue, because I mean, ECAMM is amazing. There's so many things you could do, right? And so you don't have to start with the fancy. You could start with the minor thing. But now all of a sudden, okay, let's figure this out together. It's going to be easier because we've now bonded in a really cool way.
What I love actually, now that I think about it, is not only are they bonded, I think in a way they feel like they have a shared goal, like you said. Mm-hmm. It's almost like using even those excuses there. They have a common, now they're going to have a common verbiage around how they look at things that are outside of your control. So now you could go into a situation where you have people who are really familiar with ECAMM, don't know Capsho, people who really know Capsho, don't know ECAMM, and maybe people who are just new to both tools. And they've bonded in this way where they've talked about their excuses as it relates to finding their voice. So I would imagine we could encourage them to use the same sort of thinking around excuses around technology, excuses around adopting a new tool into your workflow. So it actually gives them a common verbiage of how to go about all of these related things, which I think is really powerful, because then that stays beyond the challenge after that, because they're all, I guess, united in A, having a message to share, B, finding the right community they want to serve and build their own communities. So I think if we can do that, that would be really, really powerful. Just as a skill for people to take going forward.
Yeah. Yay, you see it. I'm so excited.
Like a live coaching call. I'm excited. I think this is going to be great. I know we've got to figure out some of the logistics and dates and things.
Yeah.
But I think the overall approach and positioning I really like. And then I think the other thing we're going to try to do is like you said, there's going to be always a group of people who probably don't get on board for whatever reason. And a lot of the things we find is people are like, oh, I got really busy at that time, or I felt a little bit overwhelmed. So we can almost even go back to them, share some of these errands, and encourage them to get back on board, really.
Yeah. You just gave me another idea. So there's another thing too, which is interesting. So the ECAMM people are going to be also doing Find Your Voice.
I think we're gonna be making it available to everyone who basically signs up to the challenge. I guess we have to figure that out too. But
so maybe if there's a break between Find Your Voice and the ECAMM challenge, then all of a sudden now we could take the dares that they did in Find Your Voice, even if they're not in ECAMM yet, depending on who knows ECAMM and who doesn't, and then put them into Capsho. So they're already seeing the content. It's almost like the challenge is happening. They see the benefit of it before it's even happened. So there could be that. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw that one that I did with Sue yet, but it was so fun.
Yes.
Like a game. Yeah. We could do games. Like, which one should I choose? I don't know. There's something there. I'd have to do it in order to see how to do it. But there was a few things that came out of that group call that was super fun. Like you have in Capsho, there's like, which title should you choose? And it could be almost a group kind of fun thing.
Yeah. That's such a great idea. And then you can kind of get some outside thoughts, but it's also, it feels like community thing that you're doing.
Yeah. And ECAMM, I'm sure once the ECAMM thing happens, then now it's like, I don't know if there's polls or anything that you could do that's kind of fun. It engages people in there. There might be something fun about that. But anyway, just even talking about the Capsho piece. So now you could take the Find Your Voice dares, put them into Capsho, because those are magic. They create conversation starters. They create these amazing posts on everything that you could possibly want. You can do newsletters. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff there. Talk for like an hour about that. But, oh, this is good. Now you could see who stepped up during the challenge. Now they're your leaders as ECAMM starts to happen, and they're helping support people, kind of like I did in your last challenge. And you could still have those people do it, but you're also picking people out of the, like, it could be some brand new person that has just gone online, but they showed up for this challenge, and now you're giving them a stage, like helping support whatever they want.
I think that would be really, really cool. And I mean, you're the queen of community, but that's the thing when you start to then, it's less on, I guess, the organizing team, but you're kind of really now cultivating leadership from within the community. I think that's really powerful, for sure.
Yeah, and we could even do, again, I'm just gonna, we can do celebration interviews or do a celebration party for people that, and what are you looking, and it could almost give more energy to ECAMM challenge. So anyone that didn't join, if they've been left out now, okay, now you get another chance. We're doing it now. And so there could be some celebration party and like, oh, we're excited. What are you excited about? Kind of like all the aliveness that comes when something new is happening. Now, all of a sudden you've got a bunch of energy around it too.
Yes.
And potentially build and invite all the people. Maybe there could be something that you do where now they all invite the people to ECAMM. So that could be the second to that challenge. Anyone that did find your voice, great. Now let's share it and tell people about this challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like now it's just about building on the momentum you already created for yourself.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yay. That's cool.
Exciting. Yeah. And I think, Stacey, so how long do you recommend? So I think the ECAMM challenge itself is going to be for a couple of weeks, but with a typical Find Your Voice challenge, how long would you recommend it should be for? Obviously, the actual content of it's going to be dependent on what we want to do, but what does the runway look like?
So I do have, so right now, so this is something I'm working on with organizations. So you're kind of still in this beta round, which is really cool because I'm still figuring out. Yeah, figuring out how it works. And it'll eventually be something I certify people to run this challenge in their community. Like Modern Prairie, I'm doing it in their community for them. My friend Margie, she's a QuickBooks company. She did it on her own and it went amazing. She's using it now in her second challenge. So where I don't run the challenge, but where they take my videos and they do it. That's kind of what my long-term goal is with this. But for you, it's already a plug and play. It's 17 days where basically I have a video, I have a dare, and then we could just upload it into guides every day. And I send, for when I run it individually, I send it to their email too, but that might be a little much for you guys. But either way, it doesn't matter. But in guides is great also. And then just every day there's a new dare. There's 2 pre-dares, which is what are your excuses? And I can send you, I'll send the whole thing to you so you see what it is. Because we could always take some dares out if you want, since you're going to have the other one. I do like the 17 days, but it's not like it's a law that has to be that long. Sure. So that would be what I would do there.
Yeah. I think that makes sense because I think we were almost originally talking about sort of doing it in the sort of 2-ish weeks, so 17 days leading into the holidays.
Yeah.
And around that time, with then the ECAMM challenge following in January. So we can kind of figure out the logistics, but I think that makes sense in terms of, just the and it gives people enough time to really get involved. But also if they're not jumping on in day one, then they still have time.
Are you charging for it, or is it part of them joining Capsho? Or
made those decisions yet? I think we put it as an option to say it is paid, and then we can offer it as a bonus for those people who sign up and for during the summit. Potentially make it free. I think we almost need to figure out the strategy for that. But do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking. Yeah, I like that because that's both. It's like get the software and it's free, or just pay for it. Either way, I like both of those options. But I was thinking you could also do this in your main community to have them buy it. And then we do Find Your Voice there, not in a brand new one. Because I know normally people open up a new challenge group, new group. So it could be in Find Your Voice, could be in the main community, which is where now you're waking up people.
Yeah.
And they're like, what's happening? And even though you're sending emails and whatever. And then that way, if people miss it, at least they're seeing it in that group. And then when you do I don't know if it's an upsell or the invitation, we'll just say to ECAMM, that will then go into its own group. So Find Your Voice would be in the kind of like free feeder group. It's almost like Find Your Voice is now feeding them to the ECAMM challenge. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think that'll work best for us. To be honest, we have a, like somewhat dormant, but a group on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this would be a really great way, as you said, to wake them up and give them something that they can really engage with. And to that point, because we will have a pop-up group alongside ECAMM that we co-host the challenge in and send people that way. But I think that would actually be really cool. And the content would be evergreen and helpful inside of the group anyway.
Yeah.
We'll enjoy much later.
And it would be great if you have just maybe even like one workshop during the Find Your Voice challenge for how to use ECAMM, just so they don't shut their brain down to new technology and they're going to feel more confident. That's the other thing. Find Your Voice helps you become more confident and helps you take messy action. So if you do mess up, it will make them be okay. I don't know if you remember my first video, it was like totally black and I'm in this one little corner. And I posted it because I'm like, this is great. People need to see this. And then when I did, we could just remember really quickly, flashback to my first live show and how I couldn't figure out the whatever. But it's okay because it's new technology. No matter what you're using, it's going to be like that, right? And so, and you have to be okay doing it. And that's what's really cool is because when you learn, I mean, ECAMM has the coolest features that I'm dying to use. But knowing that I could shut down, I could be like, oh, I can't figure it out. I'm not going to use it. Or I could just start simple and go, okay, I'm going to do this first. And then I'm going to do this. And that just feels easier. So I do think it'd be cool. Yeah, if there's maybe one or two little workshops kind of brought in. So that way they at least kind of open their mind to the technology piece too. And then they could even do their videos. That could be another comfort circle.
Yes.
We're now recording ECAMM. We could open that up maybe by the 10th day too.
And I think it's almost like, the dares would be really great practice runs. If it's enough for you to just put yourself out there, that's one thing. But if you're a little bit more practiced, then maybe it's about using ECAMM or trying it.
Yeah.
And would you say, so given if you're going to do it in our main group, would that mean that it needs to be free? Or like how would you sort of think about how you position this as a paid or a free offer?
Yeah, you could still do a paid. It's just the people that are, well, I guess that's the thing, it'd be in guides. Yeah. I guess if you did it, it's a good thought. So you could also not do it in guides and it could be either email or I could give you a portal to access if you wanted to do it paid in the main group. So that would be another way you could do it.
Yes.
If it's in guides, then most likely it would be free because everyone would get access to it. Oh, but you could do, I was going to say bonus calls, like VIP calls. It could be more of a VIP Find Your Voice then at that point.
Yeah.
Where there's, special calls around it.
Yeah. No, awesome. Like that. Well, we can, I think, make those final decisions. But I'm excited, I think, to sort of get this. So I think we're thinking of doing it. We can figure out the exact dates. Yeah. And originally put out, maybe we start even the pre-dares as part of the Black Friday weekend to sort of November, December with the Find Your Voice. So that's going to be around the corner.
Yay! How would you explain what you're doing with me to somebody else with Find Your Voice? Would you have a way to explain it?
Oh gosh, I probably need to look at the Capsho outputs, right?
Well, what are you excited about? Let's have that. What are you excited about now that we've talked about it and you kind of have a better understanding of what this is? Yeah.
I think I'm excited about the vitality of message. So what I mean by that is I think as a software company, we obviously think scale, we think all of that, and that's really important so that people can tap into their genius and not have to think about the boring stuff, right? But I think very easily I can get locked into, okay, well, the message is the message and the person is doing all of the things and they're amplifying and almost like, is it working structurally and that sort of stuff. But then talking to you, and sometimes it can be like, oh, okay, well, so we need a really logical benefit to these things so that people can go, yes, I'm going to get an ROI from doing something like this. And those are things that are all still really valid because people's time is very important. But I think what I'm really excited about is tapping into the part of people that are like, I'm successful enough, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing these things, all that kind of stuff, but kind of feeling the aliveness in them, I think, through this process, like rediscovering, or maybe for the first time discovering the actual vitality of their message versus just a message that works and gets leads and helps people do whatever they need to do. It's almost like those more personal transformations that I think I'm excited by. And the almost the personal development person in me, I think, really likes that muscle building that you spoke about in reducing the time and resistance, because it's okay to have resistance, but going from a 5 month or 5 week or 5 hour person to a 5 minute person, I think anybody who is aspiring to be an inspiring leader, whoever, that's going to be really important. So it's almost like take this time to work on that muscle, because that's when you're truly going to kind of unlock the next level. So those are the two things that I'm excited about. Seeing the vitality of message come through and people rediscover that, and also internally reduce that time and resistance that they have with themselves towards external sort of, let's say, barriers or whatever they see.
And so what do you think as far as running the community and being able to see the people connecting in the community? What are you excited about from that piece also?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a challenge for us for sure. I'm sure everyone who's watching this is like, can also resonate with that, because you almost get the initial excitement and people are like just excited by the newness of stuff. And then things can start to feel rote, or people get busy or they feel overwhelmed. So I think I'm really looking forward to, through this process, like people rediscovering the quality of interactions, because quantity is great and you can be like, oh yeah, it's trending up and all that kind of stuff. It's good. The group is growing and that sort of stuff. But is the quality of interaction where someone kind of gets reminded that they're human. Sometimes I think digital interactions and things like Facebook groups can feel a little bit like, oh yeah, I'm going to react to this, I'm going to comment on this, and I'm going to heart this. And it can feel very transactional, I think. Or it can feel very, people are just commenting by way of obligation or whatever it is. But I think rediscovering the quality that you can kind of go, okay, well, I actually feel a sense of belonging, again, I think is going to be an interesting challenge for us to actually try to bring to life. But I think I'm excited by that.
And what did I say about find your voice that helps you realize that's the antidote?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, and maybe different for different people, I think is like the actual doing part, because there's a lot of philosophy around this. And I love philosophy. I love frameworks and ways of thinking and stuff, because I think organizing your thoughts is always the first part to taking action. But sometimes you can get lost in that process. So for me, it feels like a truly physical pursuit rather than just a psychological pursuit, because I'm sure there's like 5 different ways to break down how you can find your voice.
Yeah.
Like the taking action part, where you literally are giving yourself an excuse. Like you're not even giving yourself time to think about it.
No, so we're live.
Yeah. When we were originally discussing this meeting, you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm just sending you the Zoom link, Bona. Like, if you're fine with it, but really you're not accepting any other response, right? You're not saying, oh, let me think about it. Can we do it next week? You're like, okay, here's the link. I'll see you there. And I'm like, I don't have time to think about. Okay, I guess we're doing it. You kind of just it's the doing part, because when you're talking about it, you're also doing it. You're not kind of saying, hey, here's my framework and let me send it to you in a PDF for you to read in your own time and let me know when you're ready to take it. You're like, okay, as I'm explaining it, I'm going to explain it to you while I'm doing it.
Yeah, I love
like, oh, okay. Now my body is being trained and not just my brain.
Hello, we love that.
Yeah, because it's an embodied experience now, Stacey, right? So I can see, okay, a few people might be watching or whatever, but that's not the point. It's like, I'm talking to you, so it's an embodied experience versus like me thinking about it and going, oh yeah, we could go live and do these things.
Yeah,
talk about my thoughts for the challenge.
Yeah.
But I actually have to do this live in front of people.
Yes. And do you have just a few more minutes? Because there's one more piece. I would love your help with this. This last piece is the one that I'm struggling still explaining. And it would be really cool if there's anything coming alive for you that could help it. Let's just imagine you have another community or another company. I have one guy in my group, it's a horse group where his horses helping horses. We were brainstorming this morning about, and Alan's amazing. By the way, I'm sure I'll meet him at some point through the challenge, probably. We were brainstorming some different challenges he could do in his group. But then I was like, oh, find your voice will help them show up to the challenge, because otherwise people are scared to talk. They don't know what to expect, right? So when you can help them get to know each other, now they're going to participate in the challenge. And I'm just curious from your perspective of just using something that was going to help people connect together and actually engage when the challenge happens. Maybe whatever's coming alive for you about that would be great, just to hear your words about it.
So almost saying, what would be the thing that would help people get ready for, say, the next step?
Almost like you're using Find Your Voice as a way to invite people into your ECAMM challenge,
Right. Yep.
because you know they're going to get a shared experience together with the shared goal and just how you feel about that. So by the time the challenge happens, like you said it earlier, they're going to know each other. It's going to be so much easier for them to participate in these things and challenges that come up. So I think that's part of it. But just if there's any, because you did share that now that I'm thinking about it, but if there's anything else that comes alive just from that.
Yeah, I think it's almost interesting if I draw a parallel in my life, my personal life. I think it's almost the example of, because you're still, when you're going into the Find Your Voice challenge, especially if you kind of signed up to it without really as part of a group or anything like that, you're like, oh, let me just, you're still going to be probably daunted, right? So it's like, regardless of any step that you take that's going to be in this arena, there's going to be a level of like, so I think it's, but it's like, so for me, for example, I've been recently taking dance classes. I've just started, and I've danced in the past before, but this was a totally different style I've never done before. And I was like, I really don't know how they're going to run the beginners class. Like some people can be really, like you just get straight into it and it's very, very public, if that makes sense. But sort of not, like, and I signed up by myself with no friends. So I didn't really even have people to talk to there. Everything's going to be new. But I think it's almost the comfort of knowing that it was a foundational thing where the main thing that I needed confidence around was to say, like, they are going to cover the very, very foundational steps that if nothing else, you just kind of stand there really confused by the choreography, you can default to that, right? So just knowing that, I think kind of then sort of will make you feel more confident going in to say, if nothing else, I can pull back on that. And I think that's why the Find Your Voice challenge is going to be similar to that in the sense that it's the most foundational thing. So for people who are really not skilled yet or don't feel skilled and confident yet, they can say, okay, I'm going to learn that thing and I'm going to meet other people that are also at that. So I'm not going to feel like I'm way behind. Lack of confidence also comes from unfair comparison. Right? You're comparing your day 1 to someone's day 100 and going, wow, I must be terrible at everything. So I think for that, it's like, hey, if you're new to this, just know that this is what's going to be covered for you from a foundational. So because it's a very foundational thing. But then at the same time, if you're someone who is not at that level, like similarly with my dance class, people who are very advanced come to the same class because they've been dancing that style for so long and in different ways that they're like, I need to go back to make sure that I've actually built the right habits and styles on the right foundations. Because now I'm so progressed that I want to make sure that I'm refining the very thing, the foundations I've built on. And I think that's what's going to be really interesting for our people who are like, I've been doing this for a while. I'm not where I want to be. Maybe it's because some of the foundations were wrong and I need to do that self-audit around the vitality of my message and about the resonance. Is it resonating deeply with me enough that it also is going to resonate? So I think that's where, from an outcome perspective, this is really, really powerful. And then it's kind of like, and you're not going to do it alone. You're going to have people who are on the same journey as you, so that when you hit the content creation habit challenge, you're going to be building habits on the right foundations and not just a habit on the wrong foundations, because there's nothing worse than doing things repeatedly on the wrong foundations. So for our particular use case, I think that's what's going to be resonant for people, how foundational it is. But foundational doesn't mean that it's not relevant at some point. And I think this will also, get rid of the people that don't really see these things as important, because we don't want to serve those people anyway. They're just probably the people using AI to generate their message. And then the next thing.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Oh, please share with everyone, where they can sign up for Capsho. And I don't know what you have yet live for how they can participate in the summit and all that stuff. But
yes. So basically for Capsho, for those of you who are curious about a tool like Capsho that repurposes anything from your DAREs to your actually pre-recorded content, all you have to do is head to capsho.com, www.capsho.com. I'll make sure I drop the link. Find this video somewhere and put it in there as well. You'll have the option to go to our free 14-day trial. You can try it for 14 days. You'll get 120 minutes to play around with. If you're really interested in sort of learning more so, and you can do both of these things, but we are going to be hosting a virtual summit, which Faith's going to be part of, coming up in November. So currently we have a waitlist available, so you can just make sure that you sign up for that so you don't miss out when the registration goes live, which will hopefully be very soon. So you just want to go to www.capsho.com/summit. And that's going to be a 4-day now summit. But for the first 3 days, you're going to be learning about creating a content that actually sells, growing your audience online, as well as converting that audience into leads and clients. So that's going to be super fun.
Thank you so much. And the new clipping tool is amazing too. So I love that you guys are constantly evolving and really caring about how people are interacting with what you're doing. So thank you. All right, you guys, we're going to say goodbye to you and we'll stay on for an extra minute. But thanks, you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching the replay. Let us know if you're here and what you got out of it. That would be great. And do the thing. Don't wait for opportunity. Create it.